Hello everyone and welcome back to D20 here on Tabletop Simulator. We have the usual crowd of insane miscreants. We have Blastertoad, we have 50 and we have Vagabond. We are joined today by Savory Kurt, who's going to be joining us for a penny campaign. The recent campaign arc over on Fieldwake has ended, and now we are going to be playing a penny campaign between arcs, and this is going to be Firebird, the name of the campaign. So to start off, a little introduction to those who are new to the world who've just joined us for this penny campaign. Earth suffered a reduction of resources several hundred years ago, started mining the asteroids, set up a lunar base, lunar processing, set up colonies within the solar system, and then discovered a form of faster-than-light travel in the magnetic trails that link stars. They are kind of like highways in space. They are magnetic field waves that carry ships faster than light between stars, allowing for interplanetary colonization. After several wars and several disagreements and arguments, basically what happened was government lost power and the corporations took over. And since then, corporations have been the ruling powers and the ruling democracies in space. There have been several expansions into little clusters of viable planets. And these have resulted in the core cluster, which consists of Earth, Alpha Centauri, and Moral, and then into the Finari cluster, finally into the Entusi cluster. And there are still people exploring space, running the space lanes as frontiermen, looking for new colonizable planets. And this is where our intrepid group come in. A group of frontiersmen found a planet out beyond the Entusi cluster in a new cluster of planets. They found a planet that was reasonably supportive of a colony. It had a small amount of oxygen in the atmosphere that could be condensed. It had water present on the planet. It had a carbonous soil. So they decided to research it, see if it had any value. They found it had some value as a mineral resource and some value as a colonization planet. And they sold the information to the Freedom Foundation. The Freedom Foundation is a large corporation that believes itself to be the betterment of humanity. It doesn't think of itself as a corporation. It thinks of itself as a federation, as a furtherment of humanity. Think of it like a slightly corrupt version of the Federation from Star Trek. And they have decided to send a colony ship, having originally secured the planet with frontiersmen. So the colony ship consists of several hundred people traveling the magnetic ways to go and set up a colony. And it's a very specially designed colony ship. The core of the ship is where the several hundred colonists spend their travel time, because the travel between stars still takes several weeks, even when it's faster than light. So the full trip is going to take months. So there's a central portion where the colonists spend their time. Wrapped around this are the colony pods, which will drop down onto the planet's surface. And over on the point of the ship is a small command module which will become a magnetic lane beacon, basically a small station floating at the edge of the magnetic lane for the solar system. And this all has a massive engine strapped on the back and a magnetic line connection. And we join our intrepid volunteers, for want of a better word, who have joined up with the United Planetary Colonization Service for the Freedom Foundation on the ship Phoenix. And would you guys like to introduce your characters?
Don't everybody talk at once now.
Toad, why don't we start with you?
Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. So, we're going to come up with a name for Guy, because I was thinking of some ridiculous things which we aren't actually going to use. So we're going to use Percival Strangefellow. Sure, let's go with that. We got Percival Strangefellow. He is a cartographer mapping the magnetic lanes, and being a scientist into magnets, he's got a bit of a fascination with them, maybe a little bit more than his job requires.
Okay, so we have Percival, the navigation cartographer. A little bit of an obsession with magnetism. Vagabond, who are you?
Alright, so my name is Damien Mazirk. I am supposed to be a security guard for the newly established colony. However, I must note that personally, Damien would rather not be a security guard, but because he is a bit of a gun nut and a bit more of a perfectionist that volunteered off of a dare, he decided to join on with the new colony. Personally, he'd rather write a book.
Okay, so we have an aspiring author who has signed on as security for the colony.
Yeah, yeah,
50.
nice. Make the stream host look bad with his lack of backstory. Thanks, guys.
50, who are you?
Eric Maru. I'm a see what the hell is it? I'm a geographic material scientist, and I am addicted to gambling. I'm in this to pay off my debts. That's it.
What was your first name again?
Eric Maru.
Eric.
Arick.
Okay. And Mr. Savory, who are you playing?
Okay, so I feel a little new, but I'm a retired explorer, right? So I've been with the
Freedom Foundation.
thank you so much. The Freedom Foundation. I've worked with them for a while, and I had retired, and I had decided that I was gonna kind of lay low for a while. I'd met a lady out doing my exploration. We had settled down, and the Freedom Foundation came to me as a request to kind of come with them and explore this new planet. I refused, but then they kind of blackmailed me into it by saying they'll just remove me from the planet because they go around and just colonize all these planets. And they basically said, hey, either do this or we'll just kick you out of the planet and you and your wife can go live off in space. So I decided to go with it. My name, I guess, I didn't really think too much about it. I was just going to use my own name.
You can use Kurt.
Okay, well then it's Kurt. We'll just go with Kurt. I don't want to. I'm to the point where I don't want to be here. I'm only doing this to get it over with and come back so I can resume living retirement with my wife. And that's kind of where I sit.
Okay, so along with you on the ship, there's all sorts of people. The ship is captained by Captain Joseph Sparrow, and he is going to be taking over the control of the station when you get to your colony point. There are all sorts of people. There are construction specialists, agricultural specialists, there's security specialists, there's a small military detachment. Some of the colony pods contain military equipment for the protection of the planet because it's going to be owned by Freedom Foundation. And the ship is very much specialized in becoming a very effective colony very rapidly. The idea is to set up a colony that out of the 500 people on the ship, you'll be able to set up a colony that will support tens of thousands of people who will come on in the next wave of colonization and will start actually sort of exploiting the planet for minerals and resources. So you all went through the basic training, which included basic guncraft. Some of you found that interesting, some of you found that worthless. It included basic survival training, it included basic engineering training, because you're all going to have to muck in to start up the colony. And you ended up on the Phoenix, and it has been the hell of boredom. There is essentially a cinema on the vessel that allows you to watch shit movies. Watch movies. There is a recreation center, there's exercise opportunities, there's all sorts of things you can do. There's research to be done and prep work, but in the end, you have spent probably about 8 months on a small ship with 499 other people just traveling magnetic lanes. The one member of the group that's probably enjoyed himself is a stellar cartographer, Mr. Percival, who has been using the time to basically a stellar cartographer when you're traveling the magnetic lanes works very much like a sonar operator for a sub. They are the ones who can interpret the feedback coming from the magnetic lanes. They can predict when there's going to be turbulence, when there's going to be disturbances, when there's going to be cutoff. And they're the ones who give the information on to the actual helms operators who operate the magnetic connections to the magnetic lanes. And so Percival's been quite busy. Running in front of the ship are 2 Vanguard runners who check out the magnetic lanes and then send back information to Percival, and then Percival keeps an eye on the magnetic lanes as you've been traveling. And as I said, you've been on this ship now for about 8 months. Several people have suffered from space fever, which is a kind of cabin fever for being confined for so long. A couple of people have fallen ill and have been taken to medical bays. One person broke their leg in the gym. You've had just the general issues of 500 people in confined space for 8 months. No one is massively happy. and you reach the penultimate solar system. You have reached the penultimate solar system. It is an empty solar system. There's a star, and there is a gravitational field, and there is a change in the magnetic lanes. But other than that, it is just an empty space with a star in the center. Your ship's stopped off for a couple of weeks to pick up and to recharge the batteries off the solar arrays and make sure everything's functioning all right. And then you're getting ready to move on to the final solar system.
Okay, I gotta jump off for just a second, guys. I'll be right back.
Okie dokie. So you're getting ready to move on to the final solar system, the place you are sent to colonize. So there's a building tension in the vessel. Everyone's starting to get built up, starting to get worked up, ready to move on and start the colony. The final checks have been made of payloads, and the colony pods have been set up. The landing pods, which are the small areas where people will be seated, have been set up. They found that in reality, for sort of landing people, it's better to land people in small groups. Even though you'll all be in the same pod, they found that it's if you sit 100 people in a room, they tend to feed off each other's panic. So they tend to sit people in 20-person, 30-person pods.
Ooh, I like that image.
Same.
Yep.
Same.
And these are kind of arrayed at the top of the landing pods, which will fall down to the planet. There's a few escape pods and things as well dotted around the ship, but for the most part, most of you will be landing in the sort of top of the landing pods. So you start your travel through the final magnetic lane, having received the OK from the Vanguard ships. And Percival's up on deck, and everything's going all right. Could you roll a navigation check for me, Percival?
And my nav is going to be down there. Is it navigation or pilot?
Navigation.
So it is a separate thingamajig. Okay. Navigation is plus 19. Okay. Oh,
You are indeed
I
a
had an 8.
specialist. You had an 8. So total of 27.
I
So
navigated the hell out of that.
you notice that there is a disturbance in the magnetic weight coming up, and you follow the standard thing you would do. You read the magnetic weight disturbance, and you pass on the information to the helmsman to adjust course and to adjust the situation. Magnetic lanes are reasonably predictable. You can read the magnetic weight changes, and the magnetic weight changes just continue to sort of progress in a standard kind of Euclidean format. However, this doesn't happen. The format of the wake disturbance changes after a few seconds, and so you call out another set of changes to the helm, and if the ship shifts slightly and another set of changes happen, and then suddenly the magnetic disturbance changes again, and each time you call out a change to the helm and the ship shifts, there's another change in the magnetic weight disturbance, which is getting closer and closer and closer. The ship is starting to vibrate. Everyone in the ship can feel the shudder, which happens sometimes on magnetic lanes, but it's not massively common. Is there anything Percival would like to do?
No, being that he's there observing and reading all this out, he's making note of himself that, like, these vibrate. They're supposed to vibrate. They always vibrate. But these ones are going wibbly. Why are they wibbly?
So the magnetic disturbance comes closer and closer, and Percival is actually trying to adapt to the magnetic disturbance. And eventually the magnetic disturbance hits the ship, and the ship skews. And suddenly, you are in a solar system that you don't recognize. This isn't the solar system that your Vanguard ship sent you images of. The captain calls all hands to stations, and the alert goes through the ship, the siren starts going off. And people throughout the ship are called to their various stations, with the ship crew called up to the bridge, and people called to go to the various different areas of the ship that they're assigned to, whether that's going to be to go to sort of the med section for the med bays, or whether it's to go to the actual colony pods for some of the colony officers.
Okay, well, in the midst of all this commotion, Percival's gonna shoot up from his station like a meerkat, take a look around, and just exclaim, "This isn't where we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be here."
The captain, Captain Joseph Sparrow, who is sitting ahead of you on the sort of command deck, looks back over his shoulder, having looked down at the screens in front of him, and goes, "Is there anything else bright you would like to add?"
Oh.
We are not turning into another Nets here. So Percival's just gonna shake his head and sit back down to his displays. He's had his word that he needs to say, and he's back to it.
Meanwhile, down in the bowels of the ship, our security officers, our explorers, and our scientists have felt the ship shudder and then suddenly jerk. Things have dropped off tables. Things have been dumped off walls. People have been dumped out of beds if it's their turn to sleep. And the ship has kind of ended up in a massive disarray. Several people are confused. There's several people trying to get in touch with different parts of the ship, the med bay, the bridge. Is there anything you guys would like to do? Would you like to head anywhere? Would you like to be prepping anything? Would you like to gather particular items to you? What are you up to?
I'd
Well,
like
I'm
to
just
make sure
jotting
that
down
all
some
my-
ideas for my latest novel.
Like,
Damn
the
it.
ship's shaking. I can use that.
I'd like to make sure my stuff's all packed up and then go find somebody to gamble with. I want to make some money. Just whatever. It's whatever. I'm
They
not
all
buying the
just don't
ship. If
give
we're
a
gonna
shit.
die, we're
Mhm.
gonna die. Whatever.
Do I have my weapon on me?
You can have your weapon on you. There's no sort of lack of permission to carry a weapon on ship, so you can hold your weapon if you want.
Okay, well then I'm good.
Okay, so Kurt's just basically the explorer Kurt. He feels the ship shake and jerk, and the first thing he does is go, "Where's my gun? There, good, right, excellent. I'm armed." So now we know what kind of person Kurt is. The first thing he does is go for his gun.
Great.
Is this gonna be a? Uh oh.
This is going to be a recurring issue.
I really only care about me right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah, makes sense for the character for sure.
So, the front displays of the ship are displaying the image of the solar system that you've just entered, and you have a nice open space. You've got a double binary star, and you've got a couple of planets as well.
Wait, a double binary star? There's 4 stars out there?
A single binary star, a double star.
Okay, there we go.
That's a lot smaller than I expected it to be. That looked larger on the whatever. Close enough. Zoom in on it to get a better look.
I'm done. Yay, all the pixels.
Yeah.
All the pixels. I don't know why that's quite that small, but okay. So
Needs more JPEG.
there's a lot of commotion going on around you, and being up on the bridge, needs more JPEG. Being up on the bridge, Percival is suddenly realizing that there's a lot more commotion going on than he thought. He hears calls between the captain and the navigations officer outside of the magnetic lanes. Percival isn't massively involved in the actual actions of the ship, but you very quickly get the idea that like the ship is moving without permission of the helmsman. He's calling about side vectors and unrequited thrust and activating the solar flare, the solar sail to provide slowing force. All sorts of things is going on, and this happens very quickly. And you notice that the planet is getting closer and closer, like at quite a speed. Like you're traveling at probably not much below the speed of light at this point, despite the fact you've left the magnetic lanes, and you are traveling straight towards the planet.
The
Captain-
planet or a planet?
A planet, one of the planets in the system.
Oh,
How many
this system
planets
that
are
you're
there in
on.
the system?
About 4.
Okay.
And the captain gets onto the radio, and he says something that most spaceship crew probably have minor apoplectic fits when they hear, which is all crews to impact positions, which is something that you never want to hear coming out of the comms. And suddenly, down in the bowels of the ship, everything goes to shit. People are losing their minds. These people are colonists. They're not professional spacefarers, and they panic. Several of the security officers sort of start herding people towards the colony pods. Others start herding people towards the med bays, and they start to push people towards locations where they might be safe in the event of like the ship colliding with the edge of an asteroid or clipping another ship in a magnetic lane, things like this. Actions from our delightful folk.
Okay, so I'm wondering, with the actually, from my panel first, I want to see what kind of strength the magnetic field of the planet is, and see if there'd be a way I can configure the coils of the ship to repulse from the planet's magnetic field.
Okay, roll your.
I got an 8
computers.
and computer use. Okay. Not crafting, computer use 19.
So your total score is
8 plus 19.
27.
27.
Sorry,
Okay,
I'm not
so-
mathing right now.
So, Percival jumps on his computer and starts reading the magnetic information coming back from the sensors on the ship. And there's a magnetic force, but it's not one you've ever experienced running the magnetic lanes. Whereas the magnetic lane forces tend to be kind of like magnetic waves traveling across a semi-coherent line of magnetic fields that link to each other. This appears to be just a flat magnetic field, but unlike an expected magnetic field, which is basically a ring around the source, this thing is a cone. This thing is almost like a directed magnetic field, sort of thing you'd expect to be produced by a field modulation or a.
We're basically getting tractor beamed down, aren't we?
Yeah, you're getting tractor beam towards the planet.
Nice.
You think that if you were to basically reconnect yourself to a magnetic lane temporarily, you might be able to pull yourself out of the cone. But the amount of impact that would occur on the ship, you might rip chunks of the ship off doing it.
Captain's still around, or is he doing something else?
Captain's still on the deck.
Okay, so I run over to his console, lean over top's like, I've got an idea. We may not have to go down, but we may not feel so great afterwards. Could probably link us back into a lane, but we're going the wrong direction. We're going to change direction, but we might be able to link into a lane.
Okay, so the captain kind of looks at you and goes, "You're insane, but fuck it, I don't feel like meeting the planet."
I run back to my station and start attempting to make the calculations to lock onto the lane.
So while you're making calculations to look onto the lane, the captain calls for all hands to brace for impact. This is basically, he expects you to already be in your assigned impact positions. He is now expecting you to get ready for the impact. Percival manages to connect you to a magnetic lane, and the ship jumps, and there is it's not a sound, it's more of a sensation that passes through everyone on the ship. It's kind of like if you were to put your hand on a brick wall when a massive train rumbles past. It's a deep vibration that goes straight through your body rather than sort of goes to your ears. Less a sound, more a sensation.
I like.
That's probably not good.
That's probably not good.
I don't.
As the ship sort of links into a magnetic lane and then suddenly delinks itself again as it gets tugged by the magnetic field and then relinks itself, the ship is pulled about and sort of thrown about, and several people are thrown about. Several chunks of ship get damaged. The engine core gets part of its shielding ripped off. The connectors that are connecting a couple of the orbit pods get broken, and a couple of the orbit pods go circling off away from the ship, and everyone is experiencing the sudden throw and judder and pull of this quite sort of dramatically. Is there anything other valiant crew members would like to do at this point?
I'm
Damien's
bracing for
all like-
impact. I'm bracing for impact. I don't want to die.
I don't know.
So while Damien's bracing for impact and all that stuff in his assigned spot, he says to himself, I knew I was gonna die today.
Oh God. I knew I was going to die today. Wow, he's a proper pessimist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's what I wrote in his character sheet. Pessimistic.
nice.
I'm never taking a dare again if I live through this.
Okay, so Kurt, anything you'd like to do?
If we're about to crash, no.
Okay.
No, I
Grasp
think I'll stay
more
where I'm at.
firmly upon your pistol.
Yeah, I'm just gonna hold on to my gun and just look at it lovingly.
Am I sitting next to anyone? Because I'll bet them 100 credits that we make it safely.
So the guy sitting next to you just kind of reaches out. He's a young man, kind of soft white skin. He's one of the agricultural specialists. He's basically a hydroponic specialist, and he just kind of like grabs you by the hand and goes, "Fuck it, make it 1,000."
Yes.
So as you get pulled and the magnetic lane jumps and shifts, you end up jumping closer and closer to the planet. And as you get close to the planet, the magnetic field holding the ship shifts, and chunks of the ship get ripped off and go spiraling down onto the planet in quite a large area. And you guys basically end up.
How much time do we have before we crash, like you're describing it that we're about to?
Between like the top of the atmosphere and the planet's surface, probably about 5 minutes.
Okay, I want to feed the coordinates of the origin of the cone-shaped magnetic field.
Okay.
And yell it out and tell everybody to open fire on it. I don't know whether this ship has guns or not, but stop those magnets.
Okay, so
Stop those magnets! Coordinates! Fire everything!
I just pictured it. It
Is
was
he
so
saying this
perfect.
through the intercom?
No, just yelling on the
to
bridge.
the bridge. The fact that the ship's a colony ship and not armed, like you probably get quite a few weird looks from that.
Everyone thinks you're crazy.
Nice.
So the ships, thankfully, the colony pods, which a lot of you are in, are designed for entering through atmosphere. Not necessarily in this particular state, but they are designed to enter into an atmosphere, and they naturally, with the onboard computers and things, right themselves up so that their heat shield is facing down, and they plummet towards the surface. That allows the people in the colony pods to survive. The people who are up on the command decks, who are up on what would necessarily be a station, once they get into the atmosphere, they realize everything is buggered and they head for escape pods. And the escape pods shatter off into the atmosphere. And this, like, the colony was supposed to land within roughly like a 2 square mile space. Because of what's happened, the colony ship has been broken to pieces and scattered over roughly 16,000 square miles. So
Yeah, nice.
you are
Wow,
scattered all over the place. Equipment and supplies are scattered across a massive area. And the colony pod that is shared by Damien, Kurt, and Eric smashes down, and it doesn't land particularly healthily. It lands with a massive impact. The pale-faced hydroponic specialist sitting next to 50 receives a broken piece of metal through the center of his head.
Shit.
There goes your
No one liked him.
I don't make
I knew it.
$1,000, but I don't make any money though.
I
I mean,
knew it.
I won the bet, but
I knew
you
Droid
know.
was gonna do something
Yeah.
to make you not gain $1,000.
You absolute disconnected. He's gone. I think his
Oh,
internet
no,
went.
bro.
He's ran off with the money.
Yeah, that's what happened. Oh.
Droid?
Damn it.
Yeah,
He
he's not
killed
even
an
in
innocent
Discord
person.
anymore.
He killed an innocent person to ensure that I would not get 1,000 credits.
Oh,
What a
and you're
fail being.
so much better with your 50 killed last one.
Hey, it was 58, and I didn't
Hello.
mean
Welcome
to.
back.
welcome back.
Theodore Coleman.
A wash of fire washes through, and a lot of people in the colony ship die. And you guys find yourself on the planet's surface with a crashed vessel. On your colony pod, probably about out of the sort of 100 people who would come down on your colony pod normally, maybe about 80 of them managed to get onto the vessel. And having gotten onto the vessel and crash landed on the planet, probably about 20 of them survived, including yourselves. Meanwhile, by a process which we will refer to as DM Ex Machina, Mr. Percival's crash landing pod manages to land probably about 500, 600 feet from the crash wreckage of the colony pod these gentlemen have
That
come
is
down
way
in.
too close for comfort.
Yes,
Like,
it is.
I know we're already crashing, but crashing right on top of somebody like that?
Speaking of crashing right on top of someone, considering your colony, your escape pod crashed, probably like 30, 40 seconds afterwards, you probably landed on a few, bodies that had been thrown out of the colony ship.
Nice.
Soften the blow.
Jelly.
Just squid
Squish.
splash. Yep. Cooked flesh everywhere. It's great.
Yay,
I'm a horrible
barbecue!
human being.
We're
Yeah, at
eating
least you
dinner
won't go
tonight.
hungry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you find yourselves crash landed on this planet. This is not the planet you were intending to colonize, and you find yourself crash landed onto this planet with a small group of survivors and most everybody else scattered around. You look out, and there's a river running down to an ocean, and a kind of sort of appears to be plant life and things. Most people are wearing the crisis rebreather masks, which are short-term emergency oxygen supplies. So what would you people like to do now that you have crash landed on an alien planet?
I would like to test the atmosphere immediately.
I agree with that.
Okay, so Kurt, you're the one who's probably got an atmospheric tester on you, considering you're the explorer. So you sort of fish around in your backpack supplies and you pull out a little cube.
Okay.
It's a little six-sided cube. It has a little panel on each side, and basically each panel is covered with kind of plexiglass. And just like you would in an emergency where you break out a hammer from a box to break windows or things like that, the objective is to break the glass on each of the panel's sides. So you systematically go around breaking glass, and it detects different elements of the atmosphere. It's a very small, effective thing. You don't need a computer to run it. And it's basically just a chem detector.
Okay.
So it doesn't tell you about things like viruses or bacterium in the atmosphere, but it tells you whether or not there's oxygen, whether or not there's chlorine, whether or not there's argon, whether or not there's nitrogen, whether or not there's bismuth gas or arsenic gas or any of these kind of like really deadly things. And it also tells you about all the oxygen, nitrogen, things you need to breathe. And as far as you can tell from the way the colors change, the atmosphere isn't necessarily directly toxic, but if you were to move around in it for any long period of time, you'd probably end up sort of on your knees gasping about. It's not a very oxygen-rich atmosphere, but there aren't, as far as you can tell, anything that's going to kill you if you take your mask off.
Okay. Well, let's take it off then.
Yeah.
Don't need it. I'll conserve it for later.
Okay.
So we're good to go, guys. Take off your mask. Listen
Yeah,
to
I'll
the
take
expert.
mine off. I'll take mine off. Seems fun.
Yeah, the atmosphere definitely feels a bit thin. You feel a little bit kind of breathy when you're breathing, but it's functional. Like you wouldn't want to have to run.
Yeah, don't run. Take it slow.
Take it slow. Be peaceful. Be calm. So there's a few fires burning on the wreckage. You've got the supplies that you've got on you. It's the colony pod you got into was the colony pod you were assigned to. So you have lockers containing personal equipment like spacesuits and EV suits and exploration suits and things. So it's probably a good idea to go back into the vessel and gather your personal supplies. But there is going to be an element of risk to that because the vessel is, of course, partially collapsed and also on fire. So
I want to look for my stuff personally.
Yeah, I'm gonna go find my locker and get
Yeah.
all my gear out and gear up and suit up.
Okay,
That's
so
what
while
I'm-
they're looking for their stuff, the escape pod that I landed in, what sort of braking mechanism does it use? Is it like thrust, or is it parachutes, or inflatable bags?
the landing pod you have uses thrust for the initial slow of descent and then uses parachutes.
Okay. And then the construction, is it like an aircraft type construction with very light minimal materials making up a base frame, or is it a little bit more robust than that?
It's more than that. It's more along the lines of kind of like the landing pods from old aircraft,
Oh, okay.
the old spacecraft.
Hmm.
So the gentlemen who are climbing into the ship, could you each roll me a reflex save and a search check?
D20.
D20.
Okay.
So that
Reflex
is
save.
How do you know this?
Played
Twenty.
40 hours of
20.
this?
Yeah,
Plus
I-
9.
yeah, 48 hours we've got.
and it's the D20 system. When in doubt, it's a D20.
Indeed, indeed. But anyway, I got a 13 plus 9. So 22.
22, and that's your reflex save.
Yeah, that's my reflex save. What's the next one?
Search check.
Search check. All right, let me head down.
Or
Very nice high roll for this one.
What about you, 50? What's your reflex
6.
save?
I
don't
got
know
8
where you
for
see
that,
that.
and my
reflex.
reflex is. Oops, gotta find that.
Oh, wait a minute.
So your reflex save
Plus
is
5,
up
so I got
your HP.
13. Yeah, I got 13 total. My reflex and for my search.
Oh, is it okay?
Wow,
Critical one.
the dice
Critical
hate me.
one.
I apparently found nothing.
I don't think I found anything either. 5 plus 1 equals 6 for a search check.
Okay, so I think my reflex save is 35.
No, your reflex save is plus 8.
Oh.
What did you roll on your dice?
Oh, I see it now. Right when you say that, I didn't roll a dice yet. Which
Oh,
one do I
so-
roll?
The green one. The
This
D20.
one? Oh, the big one.
The big green one. Yep.
Got it. Oh dear. What is that? 16?
16? Yep.
Somebody used my die.
Yeah,
Sorry.
16 plus 8, so that is 24. And your search check, your search is...
It's 4.
plus whatever you roll.
plus 4. Yep, so you roll
Yeah.
dice again, and you add your plus 4 to it.
So I rolled the big one again?
Roll the big one again. When in doubt, roll a 20.
Okay.
Which is both advice on what to roll and what number to get. 14
Okay.
total. Okay, so you guys climb into the ship, and there's the smell of smoke and the smell of burning flesh.
Smells
know
like
rough-
death in here.
It does indeed. You know roughly where you're going, so you're climbing around jagged bits of metal and sharp bits of sort of broken ship. You're climbing over people who have died, as other people are trying to gather equipment and sort of save equipment from the ship at the same time. It's a bit difficult to find your equipment. Most of you manage to get your base equipment, but you don't manage to find anything extra beneficial.
Oh.
Vagabond has a few close calls, and Kurt has a few close calls as well, as he's sort of going through the ship. 50 is climbing through a particularly tight section of the ship where the corridor has collapsed, and he drags his shoulder against a piece of sharp metal, and it cuts through his exterior suit and slashes into his arm. So he can take 4 damage to start straight off, because
Really,
his reflex save.
you're gonna damage my guy's shoulder in game? Really?
Yes.
I have to
Yes.
live with it in life and game. You absolute ass.
Yep.
I'm always a cripple. Damn it.
Yep, every game you play.
Dude.
Strangely enough, one of the few people who sort of finds anything of great use is Kurt. He's an explorer. He's used to hunting for things. He manages to find, as well as his own equipment locker, which he manages to get most of his equipment out of. He also manages to find a nav beacon, which is basically a bit like a small-scale radar. So he manages to add a nav beacon into his kind of collection of items that he's got access to. So you guys have managed to get most of your equipment, which includes the suits that you were assigned, whether you were assigned an exploration suit or a survival suit or a colony suit. You managed to get hold of your basic equipment. So now you are on a planet with a crashed ship. and probably about another sort of 18 survivors, 17 survivors who are kind of milling around trying to save items from the ship. And you don't know where any of your colleagues are. You don't know sort of what's going on. You are 8 months worth of magnetic lane travel away from help of any kind. So what are you guys going to do?
I think we're going to pause the video on that note and come back in a moment to continue on since we're 40 minutes in.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, we'll be right back.